Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech, Tuesday edition of What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian, joined by the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Paul Thurrott.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. All right, everybody. We'll see you all next week.
I am a man. Yeah. I can admit to that.
Paul is joining me this week as we run down a lot of some of the big stories in tech. A lot's been going on since Paul's been on. Right before going on the air, Microsoft released Mango to RTM.
Yeah, I think they did it solely to embarrass me because I just blogged that they wouldn't do that until August at the earliest.
And I was on the phone with you as we got the news, and you go,
Yep.
"Oh, this isn't good."
Yeah, this isn't good.
That was your responses. So you said they're not until you just posted that on the blog, or?
Yeah. Well, no, because someone had posted actually many someones had posted this rumor a week or two ago that Mango had RTM'd, and my buddy of mine from Microsoft and I were chatting, and he goes, you should really address this. I mean, the schedule is late August for RC and September probably for RTM, and then it's really just the same schedule as we had from last year, but for this version this year. And I said, I should write something about that, And the more I looked about it online, the more I saw everyone had simply just reposted the same story without fact checking at all. So,
well, it sounds like
I spelled out the schedule, and then of course today they released it. So,
well, you like Mango, right? I played around with Mango, and it was it's really actually one of the first times I got an in-depth feel for Windows Phone. I've played around with it, but I didn't have too much time with it. I played around with it a couple weeks ago. Not Mango, but the current one. And it's great. It really is, and the UI is really cool because nobody else is doing that UI. Yep. I'm surprised that it took so long for someone like Verizon. Like, is it even on Verizon yet? I think it is, right?
It is now, yeah. The HTC trophies.
But it took so long, and that's such a nail in the coffin for any phone. Look at
something I wrestle with is this time element. I always feel like things should be faster, not just Windows Phone, but a lot of things, But as you go back, I've been going back cleaning up my website because when we did the CMS switchover, all the dates got messed up and all the URLs are wrong. And I look back on this stuff and I realize, everything that you think things should take a small amount of time, but everything takes a long time. Things just don't happen very quickly. Mango is a nice update to Windows Phone, but that they started it roughly a year ago. And that here we are a year later and they've finalized it. And it will be months before we see the first new phones, and probably months after that there'll be any number of real phones.
How are they doing the push for the upgrade? Is it going to be, up to Microsoft, or is it going to be up to the manufacturers?
No, it's definitely going to be up to the carriers.
The carriers, yeah. So that means Verizon and God knows when it's going to
There are people today on AT&T with a certain type of Samsung Focus who still have not gotten Nodo, which was the previous, really the only software update, the only actual software update that they shipped this year. It originally shipped back in February.
That was the one that people thought would have been Mango, but it wasn't, right?
Yeah, the cut and paste and a couple of other features. So, hopefully they've learned from this, and hopefully the carriers have developed a sense of trust with Microsoft. I mean, I can't say one way or the other, but
all these companies, other than Apple, of course. Apple's the one that's controlling everything. But you look at what Android has done, and Android has done something very bizarre with their updates. Certain phones get an update, certain carriers get an update, and even with the apps, one of the people on the network, he has a Thunderbolt, and he did not get Netflix until last week. I've had Netflix on my old Droid for God knows how long.
Well, Netflix is a special case because they can't just put it on Android. There's a DRM issue. It has to be supported on the device, so it's a device-by-device basis. So I think they probably worked with Motorola or whatever to get it on that Droid early on, or what probably. But even today, new Android devices will come out and they don't support Netflix.
And they don't support Netflix. They don't have the latest version of Android, which baffles me. Before we went on the air, I was telling Paul I put Cyanogen on my phone, which is the rooted ROM. So you got to unlock, you got to root it, unlock it, whatever you want to call it. Then you got to put this ROM on there, and it's running so fast now, the phone. It's phenomenal. It's mind-blowing how well it's running with Gingerbread.
I was going to ask you that. So it actually gave you Gingerbread.
It gave me Gingerbread.
And this is on the Droid that came out almost 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm running Gingerbread on it.
Yeah, that's an awesome thing to be able to do for a phone of that age,
And I've overclocked it.
And it overclocks.
Yeah.
Does it run hot? Does it?
No. I'm running at 800 megahertz rather than the 600 it runs at.
Yep.
And it's super fast. I'm not, the battery life, of course, isn't great, but it was never that great. I really don't leave my house, so it's always charging. I always carry an extra battery with me, so that doesn't really affect me. But it's unbelievably fast. The apps are loading much faster. It's a different phone for me.
Huh.
It really changed the way the phone functions, and it's really extended its lifespan for me because now I don't have to rush out and get a phone. I was contemplating if I should buy a phone now and not wait for the next release of Android or even get an iPhone. But now I could just hang on for this for another 6 months.
Yeah, and Android's tough because there's always a next greatest Android phone ever right around the corner. That you're never safe buying an Android phone.
Yeah, and
top of the heap.
Do you think that's going to hurt them in the long run when every 3 months or every 3 weeks even sometimes there's a new Android phone coming out?
Well, I think obviously it's been very successful. They activate some crazy number of Android devices. I think it was 550,000 a day, which works out to, I did the math on this now. I can't remember, but somewhere in the 16 to 20 million a month range. It's a lot of fun, maybe 16 plus million. It's crazy, how fast this thing is growing. I think that what you were alluding to earlier, the reason that this doesn't upset people, i.e. the fact that certain phones, don't ever get upgraded to new versions or get upgraded very late, and it's never really clear how or when it happens. Everyone is in a feeding frenzy over these Android devices, but at some point it's going to have to mature and slow down, and then I think these people are going to realize, like, what's going on here? There needs to be a better system here. It's tough on the Windows Phone side because there are so few devices, and the thing is moving so slowly that this stands out as a big problem. But I think with Android, there's so much excitement because they're selling so fast that this just doesn't get called out for whatever reason. But it's definitely a problem, and I think it's going to continue to be a problem.
Yeah. So Lion, let's move on to Lion. Lion came out last week. I know you're a big fan. Have you played around with it?
I am a big fan.
Are you? Are you a big
fan? I like Lion,
okay.
Actually. And I know that is going to shock and hurt some people, but
it's not bad.
It's good. It's clean. I like there are little things I like. The squared off progress bars and all that stuff. I like the full screen UIs. I like the iPad type things that they've done, even though they're not necessarily always successful, because I think that this is where the company is heading. I got more than one email from readers who said, "Hey, by the way, it's not Mac OS 10 anymore. It's OS 10." And I went and looked it up, and it is kind of interesting. If you look at the Apple website, it says OS 10 all over the place, not Mac OS 10. But then when I looked at the press release for the announcement, it actually says Mac OS 10 almost everywhere. But it's almost like they're starting to downplay the Mac name for the first time, perhaps with an eye towards the future where, for consumers, these things almost become one product line. So it does seem like they're moving the iPad up and the Mac down, if you will.
It's an interesting blend, and it's almost like this hybrid OS where they have incorporated certain things, but they're not make or break type add-ons for me. Like even the 3-finger swipe to different screens. Like I don't feel that I'm really going to use that. For me, I'm really not going to use the full screen function. But I'm sure a lot of other people are.
I have to say, I don't have a lot of experience with this, and I don't have a lot of opportunity to do this a lot on the Mac per se. But I guess in the new version of iOS, it's currently in beta, they have similar gestures, right? Multi-finger gestures where you can switch between applications and so forth. We had a friend of mine who was staying here with his family for a few weeks, and he was using the Mac a lot. And I noticed that he was running everything he could full screen. And that he was switching between applications by doing the 3 or 4, I can't remember which it was, but 3 or 4 finger swipe to kind of just, you kind of sweep the application aside to go to the next one.
Yeah.
And, a lot of power users aren't going to like that thing, but I thought, and it's not particularly discoverable, but I think once you know how that works, it's kind of an interesting way of doing things, The
one that I've been using more is the 3-finger swipe up. Which kind of, I guess it's called mission control
or whatever.
I've been using that when I'm lost and I can't find some of the programs that I'm running. But that's the only real time that I use it.
The big controversy in Lion, of course, is the scroll direction. If you use it with a trackpad.
Yeah.
Right? Which I actually like. I think it makes sense.
I flipped it back to normal because I was using another one that was...
if you go back and forth, it's really hard.
Yeah,
but if you just use Lion, it works great.
So now I'm switching back this week just so I could get adjusted to that. But do you think Microsoft would go to that? Do you think Windows will go to the opposite way for scrolling? Is that what the next thing is, or is this just Steve Jobs saying, "Well, I'm going to stick it to everybody and switch everything around"?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, can you see Windows doing this? Can you see Linux doing this? Can you see Google doing this, where they totally flip the way you scroll?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Microsoft. Well, they tried to switch. Remember, at a time to a one-click thing so that Windows would be like the web.
Yeah, and that didn't work.
And actually, that didn't really stick, did it? So I guess they went back to the double click. People change their habits very slowly out in the big world, in the real world. I think the nice thing about the Mac user base is that, obviously there are millions of them, but there aren't billions of them. So you can do something like that. And it helps, I think, when people are coming in from iPad, which is where the big future is. And so they make it more, they make it the same between the two, and that makes sense. I mean, can Microsoft do that? Microsoft would be more likely to make it an option, than to just inflict that on people.
Yeah.
I think that's just the way they do things.
I don't know. See, when I'm using a tablet, when I'm using, I guess, the iPad, because I'm not really using a tablet. When I'm using the iPad, it's a different feel for me, and I understand that it's a different device. Are they kind of saying, well, no, it's one device now, and it's all the same features, and this is where we're going? It's an interesting concept that we're going into this one UI type environment when it comes to the desktop and portable.
Yep. Yeah.
And Microsoft is headed in that direction as well. So it's not just Apple. Right.
The interesting thing here is that, Apple gets, and they should get, all the credit for moving ahead very aggressively. But on the other hand, when you look at Mac OS X Lion, it's Mac OS X. You could hold that thing up next to the original version of Mac OS X, and the similarity is there. I mean, it's very, very clearly an evolution of sorts of that original Mac OS X version. We'll know more in a few weeks when Microsoft has the build conference and everything, but it does appear that Microsoft is suddenly moving aggressively in its own right and coming up with its own new kind of UIs for Windows 8, and we'll see how pervasive that is, and whether or not it's just like kind of a shell on top of the old shell or whatever. But it would be an interesting circumstance for Microsoft to finally find itself in a position where they really have to.
The enthusiast behavior is so bizarre, and I'm guilty of it too. People have been screaming that Microsoft should drop legacy and just start over, leave registry, and move on to this new Microsoft, new Windows. And that's kind of what they're doing in a. I mean, they're not dropping registry, but they're going into that. They're doing the HTML apps in the tiles. And now everybody's screaming that no, this isn't what I wanted. Change it back, change it back. And it's fascinating. And you have to wonder, at what point does Microsoft say it, and does Apple? I mean, Apple's starting to do it now. But what point do they say, you know what? We really don't care about what you bought 5 years ago. This is what the product is now, and this is the direction we're going to go. It's harder for Microsoft, of course, because they have 98, 99, 95, whatever the percentage of the market share. And they have enterprise users. While Apple, people just get a new Apple and they say, okay, well, this is what it is, and I'll learn it.
I think it's impossible. And the reason is that over the years, the support timeline for these versions of Windows has only gotten bigger and bigger, And it's an interesting circumstance, because in the early days when PCs were very unreliable, you would have this version of Windows that would stick around for 3 years. The new one would come out and people would upgrade or buy new PCs, and we would kind of forget about that old version pretty quickly. Unfortunately, some of these Windows versions have been very popular and they don't go away, you know, and you can't just tell your enterprise customers we're not going to support that anymore. So, I mean, if anything, the support timelines have gotten bigger. Windows XP is going to be
here forever.
For quite some time.
It's fascinating, right? I mean, we're talking about 10 years old, Windows XP.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2001 it came out. Yeah, so 10 years.
Yep.
I don't see Windows XP going out for. I would still imagine people would be using it 20 years from, in 20 years total. Not 20 years from now, but another 10 years.
There's something about it. It really kind of hit at the right time or whatever, the right combination of features and
I think Vista was single-handedly responsible for, keeping it alive.
Yeah.
And my wife went to St. John's University, and they gave her two. I think she's at her third ThinkPad, but this one now has 7 because I installed it. But 3 times, this was in the span of Vista, they downgraded it down to XP. Each one was downgraded to XP. So I think if universities are doing this and and they're still doing it because the last laptop she got was about 8 months ago, and they had downgraded to XP from 7, I believe. From 7. I think XP is going to survive for let's say 6 more years. And that's my number. That's what I'm throwing out there.
Well, last month they had Microsoft had a partner conference where they said that, or I guess it was this month, that XP only had 1,000 days left before it was unsupported. 1,000 days. That's like 3 years. Like what? 1,000 days.
That said, countdown begins.
Kind of a long time. I mean,
they went 10 years out. Little ticker on the website: 997 days left.
Yeah, exactly. They probably will do that.
Since we're talking about Microsoft, I want to go into this. And I saw this headline, and when I sent you the notes, Paul, I made sure you knew that this wasn't my my quote or me thinking this. Should Microsoft sell Bing? This was on your website at thewinsupersite.com. You wrote about this.
Yep.
People are going at, I believe it was Reuters was saying it, and via the New York Times, that Microsoft should sell because they only have 27% of the market share.
I know. That's crazy.
Bing only has 27%, so obviously they're losing.
Well, they're losing money on it, right? So there is a case, there is something to be said for Microsoft introduced, not just Bing, but before Bing, right? Bing is really just the latest version of Windows Live Search or whatever they called it before. They've been losing money on this endeavor, I think, from day one, basically, right?
But I mean, what does Yahoo do? Was Yahoo hemorrhaging money in the beginning? I mean, I'm trying to think. Well, that was early. But
the thing that's interesting about Yahoo, people sort of forget this or maybe don't even realize it. Yahoo never had a search engine, right? Yahoo was a search or an internet directory, which was a hand-curated list of sites that people found to be valuable, and that they always farmed out the search service to someone else.
Yeah, were they using Alta Vista at one point?
Probably, yeah. And I don't remember who they were in the early days, but one of the things, and I just happened to be reading this, and there's a book about Google that came out recently where the guys from Google kind of looked at Yahoo's business and they thought, well, these guys are the 20-pound gorilla in our market, but they don't really even compete with us directly. They don't have their own search engine. Maybe someday we could compete with this other company and provide Yahoo with search results. I mean, that was seen at the time as something that would be a big business for Google.
I'm trying to find what they were using in the early days.
Yeah, I don't remember who their search provider was, but I think the thing for Microsoft is that Microsoft is really a platforms maker. That Windows and Office and Server and Azure and all those other things that they make, Xbox 360, are platforms. People write software and services that run on top of these things. And that search is an integral part now of multiple Microsoft platforms. It's not, they don't just have this, it's not like an internet search engine. Bing is much, much more than that, or at least the technologies.
Well, and we're forgetting, when did Bing launch? Bing launched in 2009, so about 2 years ago, it's become Bing. Yeah. And they've captured 27% of the market. They did not have that.
It's almost double, by the way, what they had at the name change.
Yeah, I think it was like 10% or 9%, 11%, whatever it was. They've doubled in 2 years of their market
That's in the U.S.
In the U.S.,
there are some companies where Google has 90+% of the market, and maybe there are some markets where Bing has more than 27%. But I was actually amazed by that figure. Assuming it's correct, that if Microsoft has 27% of the market, it's incredible. It's incredible. People, when they search the web, they say, I have a question about something. You should Google that. I mean, it's the tissue or the Kleenex rather, right, of internet search. I mean, that's the word that comes to people's mind. I mean, how do you compete with something like that?
Yeah, I mean, how do you compete with Xerox? I guess you gotta. Yeah, I wonder how they got that
you
market.
Differentiate,
right?
I guess, right, in some ways.
Yeah, how did they get that market? Did Windows 7 have a lot to do with it by people upgrading and it being the default default search?
I bet the majority of it is actually Yahoo, right? Because they are doing Yahoo search results. And, the Yahoo website still gets a lot of hits, and people still use the search box on Yahoo a lot.
Honestly, I think it has to do with the rewards they give you every time you search. You get a little coin
That's
at Bing. And I guarantee you some people are definitely using it for those little perks.
Yes.
I'm logging in now to see how many points I have.
Yeah. Let's see.
I'm not
see
even
what,
sure.
Sweepstakes you
what do I win?
for now.
Let's see.
You get a small panda bear.
I have 426 points.
Okay,
so
which is worth what in Bing dollars?
Let's see. I want to go redeem this. I'm afraid if I hit redeem, it's gonna totally take my money away.
It would you get a free magazine subscription.
I could get. Well, no, I didn't even qualify. I could get Entertainment Weekly for 1,500 credits. Mm-hmm. I could get a month's Zune Pass for 547 credits. I could enter into an Amazon gift card entry for $1,000 if I have 40 credits. So that's not bad. I could do that.
Yep.
You could donate, which is great. You could donate to kids in need. I guess, people are doing this.
Yeah.
I don't know who is, but people are.
I mean, as a search engine, Bing works fine, right? It's pretty. It works well and all that stuff. They've gone after these kind of key sub-search types, I guess, vertical searches, whatever you want to call them. Medical was a big thing for a while, and entertainment search is a big deal for them. People are always searching, Amy Winehouse dies. Now people start searching for Amy Winehouse because they want to see pictures of her and what happened and all that. I don't know. The strategy is kind of interesting. I've always, you can go and kind of deep dive into some of these things and you say, yeah, this is a pretty good way to search for a plane flight. But then I always go back to Expedia to search for a plane flight.
Yeah.
Personally, So, I think it's more of a platform for them. And I think it's wrong just to look at this search engine and say, wow, they're really not doing well there. I think part of the reason they're not doing well is that their ad platform hasn't really taken off in any meaningful way yet, and that they can't command the prices that Google commands because Google delivers more users.
But I mean, look at this. Really, it's just two big search engines left. I mean, it's Bing and Google.
Yeah,
those are the only two. There's really.
Yep.
And what do they say? If you have 1% of the market, it's $1 million.
That was yeah.
I think it's some stat like that, and there are a ton of little browsers out there, little search engines that are actually generating a lot of money. There was one that came out. I forgot what it was. The Google killer. They were talking about how it's going to kill Google.
Well, there have been many of these, right? So I can't remember.
A couple years ago.
Yeah, no, it was Cool or something.
Cool, yeah. COUL or QU.
Well, there's things like Wolfram Alpha, which is not a pure search engine, but is something that is, I guess, plugged into. I think it's plugged into Bing actually. And then there are other pure search engines like Ask.com, right? They have their own search engine, I believe. There was an Ask Jeeves service, that may or may not still be around.
I think they are. Ask Jeeves. Yeah, it's still around. What was it? The other one? Web Crawler was another one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a bunch of them, but I'm sure some people are still using them somewhere.
Yeah. Hey, I used to use Alta Vista back when everyone was still using Yahoo stuff, and I thought, I'll never switch from this. This is the best, I mean, that's one of the tough things maybe for Google is that if they can be beaten, there's not necessarily any brand reason to stay there other than the fact that, maybe you're using now use Gmail and Google Calendar. And I think that's why they put out all these other services, because even though they don't generate income directly, they kind of keep you in that Google.
Yeah. Well, I think Gmail has done a great job at that, right? When Gmail started the reason why they captured so many people is because they made it into this invite-only type environment, right? It was this cool club. And that's why a lot of people wanted to go in.
Search-based ads next to every email, which I still, by the way, look at with some sense of amazement. Every once in a while, I'll open up an email message. I'll do one now to see what it says. Actually, I'm blocking in this one. So, but you'll open up an email message, and if you ever look at the ads that are based on the words in the email, sometimes they're insane. They're just the craziest ads.
I have a Betty Crocker ad with the email I have with you.
Yeah.
Dinner made easy. I don't know what we discussed. A lot of Xbox stuff, though. That's interesting.
Yep.
Xbox Live, 3 months. Android phone. And so, I guess it's, it's grabbing what's in the emails.
It's just like the spam mail you get in the physical mail. There's a certain segment of the population that kind of wants to click on that stuff.
We're talking about the browsers and how people switch over and they'll play with it, but especially in the OS world, I don't think that's a common thing. There's such a battle between Microsoft and Apple, but there really shouldn't be because Microsoft is dominating. But is there room for another OS? You look at Google Chrome, which the Chrome OS that came out and they're shipping, and I should be getting my Chrome OS laptop any day now.
Okay, which one did you get?
The Samsung.
Yep.
Which it looks solid. I mean, it looks really cool. I don't know if I'm ever going to use it as my everyday thing, but I got it just so I could move around. It's almost like my netbook, and I thought I might as well get it.
Yep.
Mozilla wants to start in the mobile OS world now. They want to have a Chrome OS type operating system. But didn't we see this a couple of years ago with those quick start OSs that didn't go anywhere? Everybody was doing this mini OS, Linux-based OS on top of the Windows, and before you boot, you could boot into that, but nobody ever used it.
Sure. This is, I have a problem with this.
Okay.
Because we've already done this, Chrome is already there. And this is really, I just feel like this is outside of Mozilla's core competency,
Yeah.
I think not that I have some success idea for Mozilla that will ensure they'll always be around, but it just seems like they've had some measure of success doing what they do, making this browser, and that this browser can and should exist on all of these mobile platforms. But I don't know. This one, I suppose it's a realization of that Mark Andreessen dream, that Mozilla, Netscape at the time, would be the platform on which people would run apps, which, 1997 sounded kind of ludicrous.
Yeah.
And of course, here we are today, and I can look at my own taskbar in Windows, and half the icons down there are for web pages, essentially. So I guess we're heading there.
But I mean, do we need another application like that? No. And who's going to use it? This is the thing. First of all, I don't think the Chromebook is going to be successful as far as grabbing a market share. I think it's a very niche thing, and some people are going to get it, and they're trying to appeal to education use and for business use. But if you're a business and you're going to buy 100 of these things, or let's say 20 of these things, nobody's going to understand how to use it. And you can theoretically, on the server put Office and have everything running, and that'll work. But it's still,
that's a complex way of doing something.
Yeah, it's a convoluted way of doing it. Rather than if you're going to spend the money, if you're going to spend, you're still spending $500.
I think the goal with that kind of stuff is just to make companies comfortable moving to this new future as Google sees it. So that in the future, Google can say, hey, you were doing this kind of complex, expensive remote desktop Office thing. But instead of doing that, why don't you use Google Docs, which is free, and it's right there in the browser on the Chromebook. You don't have to run this separate thing that's crazy. And maybe that would work, assuming Google Docs matured to the point where it's a viable Office competitor somewhere down the road. But
currently it's not.
No, it's not even close. And the thing is, Google, unlike Mozilla, is a huge company with endless supplies of cash that they can throw towards doing all this stuff. So they can do things like target the corporate markets and target consumers and make multiple, different OSs now even, and have all of these online services. Mozilla makes a browser, so they don't really have the full platform thing that Google does, let alone Microsoft, right? I mean, so it's a completely different world. This just seems stillborn to me. I sort of understand why they would do it. I think they feel like they're getting X'd out of this market and of the future. And they're thinking, guys, we run the web and everything's running on the web. Why aren't we part of this? And it's understandable why it's frustrating. But we just don't need another one of these things.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Even with the Chromebook, I mean, you're going to make it. I guess if they make it, they make it. It's going to use HTML5 based applications, which a lot of people are going to start doing.
Yep.
It's I guess it's just a simple browser based OS. But why do we why do they feel that they would be able to captivate any type of following or any type of
yeah? This reminds, you know what this is it's Google Plus.
Yeah.
Which is this company, the company that needs this, that makes this, needs it. But, you know, for people that are going to use it, it's just another thing that is like this thing we already have.
Have you jumped over to Plus?
No, I used it, and then I decided this is too much like Facebook, and everyone I know is already on Facebook, so...
Yeah, my Google Plus is spanned by Chris Pirillo posting every 30 seconds. That's what's happened to me.
Well,
It's just him. And I have, you know, I'm looking at it right now. I have about 20 people on there.
Yeah.
And it's just him.
Sure.
It's just his posts. So I don't... It's an interesting thing, you know, how people are jumping over to migrating. But I guarantee in about a month or so, everybody's going to forget about it and go right back to Facebook. Just like they always do.
Yeah,
we're forgetting that the environment survive. The usership is based on everybody being there. So if I don't know who's there, and if you're not using it, and if my parents aren't using it, I'm really not going to go on there.
Yeah, in a very general way, the comment I made early on was simply, you know, if you could find the one company that you trust less than Facebook with privacy, who would that be? You know, and now they have this service where I had quit the thing and I was still getting Google Plus emails from all these people, and it's like, seriously, how do you turn this off? I mean, it's like this crazy embedded thing that's, you know, it's stuck to you and you can't even get rid of it. You know, eventually I finally did, but you know, finding the controls for that are very difficult.
And people are loving it, by the way. People are loving it.
Yeah, but what kind of people, right? I mean, these are very technical people.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself maybe says something about it. And for whatever it's worth, I think it would be very easy for Facebook to copy all of the stuff that is currently better about Google Plus. You know, actually, Facebook already has groups and lists, both of which satisfy the need, you know, for sharing with just certain groups of people. They just don't expose it very well in the UI, so that wouldn't be a very hard change.
But see, I had an issue with that. I don't. Here's my thing. If I say anything on the internet, I imagine everybody's going to see it at some point.
So here's a weird one for you. I culled my Facebook friends list so that it was only people I actually know.
Yes, and I made the cut, actually.
You
Very
did?
excited.
Oh, you did? Hold on. Let me fix that.
I did.
So
Not anymore after today.
I posted some random thing one day about whatever. And later in the day, I'm on Twitter, and I see this post that I had made on Facebook, but it's on Twitter. And I kind of took me a second to understand what I was looking at, because I'm looking at this thing thinking, wait, I put this on Facebook, and Facebook's not like public.
So
but
how was
what
it
had
on
happened
Twitter?
was one of my friends had posted something I put on Facebook on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I was like, so now you're in this new area, kind of a weird gray area, where in the past, if some guy I didn't know had done this, I would have said, okay, well, that's enough of you, and we're not friends anymore.
But now it's someone you know.
But now it's someone I know. And it's like,
it's a sticky thing.
It makes it weird, right? I mean, there's no way to address that.
I mean, you have to be careful in a sense. And, you know, if it's in writing, you could kind of correct yourself, and you could kind of step back and say, okay, maybe I shouldn't say that. And I think when we got together, I was talking to Mary Jo and you and Ed, and we were discussing this. But being on air, especially for me, I say so many things that could be taken out of context so easily, and they could come out to be so bad and evil. But it's my responsibility to kind of filter myself. And I feel that it's the same thing with Facebook and Twitter.
Yep.
Whatever I say and whatever I do, I have to imagine that somebody will see that and say, you know what, maybe he shouldn't have said that. There were a couple, you know, I wanted to make a comment about the Amy Winehouse situation because they've martyred her in a way. In media. She's, you know, that's all we're talking about, poor Amy, poor Amy. But a week before that, they were making fun of her, and they were saying, when is she going to die? You know, there were there were death, what do they call them? Death pools on her.
Yes. Yeah. She would have been number one on any celebrity Deadpool. No doubt about it.
And all of a sudden, you know,
why is this shocking? You know,
and I wanted to say something, and I wrote it, and I said, you know what, maybe I should pull that, and I shouldn't post that because somebody may feel that I was a little harsh, and it was a little harsh, and I filtered myself, and I said, you know what, somebody later down the line that maybe I'm doing business with might get offended by that, because not everybody has the same sense of humor as I do. So I decided I'm not going to post that. But I live by that every day when I'm going online. Sure. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people just go out there and just throw everything out, everything they want to say.
Well, I mean, it would be neat to be kind of a normal person and
just be an ass.
Post, like, hey, I got a new cat. Here's a picture of my cat.
By the way, I do that every week.
Kids went to school today, and they said the cutest thing, and
it's weird, but
you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but even with the circles thing, I think it's. I know some people might use it, but for most people, they just don't care what they're saying to people, and they're just going to put it out there. Well,
and there's a level of complexity to. Okay, so here's you want to write something about Amy Winehouse. Now, who would this be okay for? Who would not be offended by this statement? So
most people that work for me.
Well, but then you have to sort of pick them out of a list, and I'll just share this witty comment with those people on Google Plus. It's just kind of ponderous,
Yeah, I don't use the on Google Plus. I don't use the groups thing. I just have a general group, and I just send everything out there if I'm doing it. Most of the time, I'm going to use it for pictures.
Then that's Facebook.
Yeah. So it's just another version of Facebook where, you're the cool kid because you got an invite.
It's Facebook, and it has chat roulette.
Yeah. It's interesting how they're doing it.
Yeah.
We were discussing off the air about Roku, and I actually, while we were speaking, I bought a Roku 2.
Yep.
Because
which is actually like the 4th generation Roku device.
Is
by
it?
The way.
Okay.
I don't know why they chose that name. But.
So this, I'm assuming it just came out because it was getting FCC approval recently. About like 2 weeks ago, it was getting FCC approval. So I'm assuming it just came out. I don't know exactly when, but I just bought the the highest one, XS, the $99 one.
Yep.
And it's free shipping, and it's great.
Yeah, the highest end one, which is only $99.
Yeah.
I mean, this competes with an Apple TV,
and it totally blows the Apple TV out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're, just firmly in the Apple camp, right? But it supports multiple services, which Apple TV does a little bit of now, right? The Apple TV actually does have Netflix.
Yeah.
But, these guys have Pandora and Hulu Plus and Amazon, which is actually pretty
Angry
huge.
Birds. You could play Angry Birds.
Angry Birds on the
How are you going to play Angry Birds? I guess
the new one comes with this remote, so you can use the remote for that. And apparently, I think that the one that you bought, the XS, that comes with Angry Birds, actually has a GPU in it, which is what enables these new games.
Oh, that's fascinating. I wonder how well it's going to perform.
New games platform.
So yeah, I mean, you have Web TV on there, or Friends at My Damn Channel are on there, Rev3, Blip. So a lot of people are on there, which you don't get with a lot of other services.
Yeah, they're always missing something. I'm interested to see with this version of Roku how local media actually works, if it does. So for example, they have a USB port where you can plug in a hard drive, and if there's content on there, music or videos or pictures, you can play them through the device, which is a lot like WD, Western Digital makes these set-top boxes that are kind of like that. It'd be nice to have one that kind of did everything. You can't really do that on an Apple TV unless you...
What do you feel that the previous model was missing, the one that you had?
So actually, looking at the specs, this lineup this year is very similar to the lineup they had last year, which I think is why they're calling them 2, because I think last year it was Roku HD, Roku XD, and Roku XS. So now it's Roku 2. It's the second version of all those. The boxes are a little different. The remote, it looks very different. Obviously, it has the games, but I mean, on the lower end ones, I think they're pretty much the same. Yeah,
so there's really not much of a difference.
I mean, I think anyone who has an HD TV, if you have 1080p, it'd be worth going to the 1080p version at the very least. And then up from there, I mean, it's basically just a wired Ethernet port and this, the better remote and the games.
See, this is my issue, and I bought it without thinking. I have Google TV on my in my bedroom because the living room is an older Hitachi Plasma that doesn't have HDMI.
Right.
It has DVI.
And your Google only has HDMI, Google TV.
Google TV has only HDMI, and it doesn't, and that's fine for video, but I wouldn't be able to grab audio from it because when you go from HDMI to DVI, DVI doesn't support audio.
Yep.
Does this have audio ports in the back? Does it have RCA cables?
You know, I was just looking at that, and I've lost it. So let's see
Yeah.
the spec list, and we will find out.
I'm trying to see. It says AV cables, but I don't know what that necessarily means.
When I bought this, they tried to upsell me on an HDMI cable. So
yeah, for $9, and they put it in there automatically.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I bought it.
Cheap.
I bought it by mistake.
So let's look. It
does.
says
It does. It says AV.
AV. Well, what does that mean though? So it's analog stereo mini jack to RCA. Okay. So it's a mini jack. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
It's like what you would have on a Mac laptop.
Yeah, so I could definitely have this in my living room, which that's what I wanted because I have the PS3 down there, and it's not really.
It also has a micro SD card slot. It's just bizarre, which is for expanding the internal storage for such things as additional games or additional channels.
What is the internal storage on this device?
Yeah, they're not gonna. It doesn't say.
Like 2 gigs?
It's got to be teeny. I bet it's really small.
You think it's smaller than a gig?
I don't know what it is, but I think it's probably pretty small.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this could possibly be a, cable replacement if you get one of these in every room.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I don't believe is in here that needs to be in here is some sort of network-based media access.
Okay.
I don't want to plug a hard drive into the unit personally. What I'd like to do is have it see my network, and then I happen to have everything on a home server. And it would be really neat if you could just browse that content. And this is one of those areas where even when it's offered, as on a Xbox 360 or the WD-TV, which is a decent box, they have kind of a lousy interface, and it's slow.
Well, they all do. Yeah, all of them have a horrible interface. So let me ask you this. Do you have local media that you use other than music? Do you have local videos that you play?
I have DVDs that I've ripped up on the server. I have my music collection. And then we have photos. A lot of times if, we're having people over or something, you might put some music on and it will, whatever the device is, if it's Apple TV or the WD TV or well, actually not the Roku box because they don't do this, but, it'll play music and then it might jump to some photo slideshow or something, so whatever you might have, share it out. Yeah, sometimes, we go on trips with friends or something. They'll have them over and here are the pictures from our trip or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess all you need is Netflix and Hulu, really. I mean, those are the 2 big ones, right, that normal people want.
Yeah, and Amazon might get there too, with the popularity of Android and Amazon supporting Android with an Apple-like media store that has, TV shows and movies and music. I could see Amazon service really taking off. And if you're a Prime subscriber like I am, you get their Netflix-like streaming service for free as part of that.
Yeah, you're right. We have Prime and I tried to find something on there, but they don't really have a large selection.
It's not very good. So, it's funny, people will complain about the selection on Netflix, which is understandable, but it's maybe 100 times better than the selection on Amazon right now. So I'm sure Amazon will get there, but...
Well, people are complaining about everything about Netflix at this point, right? People are extremely disappointed. People are leaving them.
Well, yeah. I wonder, though, it seems like what's really going to happen to Netflix is they're going to continue growing. They're just going to slow a little bit, because of the recent price hikes. But
well, they released, Q2 earnings, and Netflix rises to 25 million subscribers, which is a huge number if you think about it. SiriusXM has about 20 million. And this is the company that merged. They've been around for about 10 years each.
Yes.
And they said most of their new accounts are streaming accounts. And that they feel that the DVD business has peaked. They peaked the DVD business. But they had a fall in the stock, right? Yesterday, I believe. The stock fell.
Well, there have been a lot of complaints about the price increase, right? They separated out the DVD plans from the streaming plans, which I think makes sense. I think what they could have done that would have just erased most of the complaints is given the people who did both a deal of some sort where the sum of the two was less than paying for them separately. But, effectively everybody got a price hike. So it was seen for what it is, which is simply they're popular. They know they're popular. And this is the type of thing they can get away with. So,
but I mean, this might be a way for them to kill the DVD business. They've said that they want to leave the DVD business and just go streaming. And I mean, this is a great way of forcing people to go streaming.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the way technology works, the economics of streaming video is only going to get better and better for them, right? Shipping physical discs around and dealing with breakage and the discs that get scratched and all the customer service issues, that only gets more and more expensive every year. So it's interesting that there are fewer and fewer people doing that, and they're probably costing the company more and more as time goes by. So.
You still?
It's understandable.
Are you still getting the DVDs from them, or are you just going?
Yeah, I'm doing it for now. I mean, I still have a pretty big queue of things that I've got to come through. We don't send them back as quickly as we used to, and it's something I should probably look at. But this will probably be the last year.
I have a DVD sitting here for the last 8 months. I haven't even watched it.
Yeah,
it's just sitting here, and all we do is due to live streaming. I watched a documentary last night called Dear Zachary.
Yep.
Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, such a sad story. God, it was mind blowing how depressing it was. But it was a great documentary. But it was just it was so depressing. It's about a doctor that dies, and the girlfriend kills him, and the friend is doing I don't want to ruin it, but the friend is doing a documentary about the guy's life because the girlfriend got pregnant, the one that killed him. Got pregnant with his baby and is, having a kid, and it was a documentary for the kid. And there's a huge twist in the end that I don't want to give away, but it was so depressing. But it was great. It was great. I don't know where I was going with that, but it was really good.
Only on DVD.
But no, I got it on Netflix. I would have never seen it if it wasn't for Netflix streaming. I would have never given it a chance.
Actually, Netflix has some pretty good documentaries, I have to say.
I would have never given it a chance if I had to order a DVD.
My problem is there are still things that are only on DVD. I caught part of a mini series of some kind, and I wanted to see all of it, and I looked to see if it was on streaming, and it wasn't. Or we watched various TV series, and it's really nice watching them back to back rather than waiting every week. So we'll watch them in these big batches, and DVDs pretty good. I mean, obviously it would be better just to have them streaming, but on Netflix, sometimes those series will only have, a couple of the seasons will be on there, but not all of them, or the seasons will only be on there for a certain amount of time and they go away. And, it just depends on what it is. I think over time, the DVD, I mean, we're going to drop the DVDs. We're probably never going to do Blu-ray here in my house through Netflix, even though we could if we had to, I guess.
For what, the DVD rentals?
Yeah, it's another $3 or whatever a month, and
I think they're adding it. Aren't they adding it to the DVD plan? If you get the DVD
oh, are
plan,
they?
Yeah.
Right now it's okay. So maybe that's changing. So before it was an additional cost.
Additional, yeah. Now I think it's in court. That I guess that's how they're saying. Okay, well, you still want to get a Blu-ray, you got to pay $15.
Okay.
Which I don't know. I'm not crazy about the Blu-ray.
I'm not going to be buying Blu-rays certainly, and I'm not going to. I went through growing up. I bought a lot of VHS movies. We bought a lot of DVDs. I've probably personally purchased the Star Wars trilogy like 13 times, like a jerk. But I'm never going to do it on Blu-ray. I'm just never going to do it. That's the dividing line right there.
Yeah, I have a couple DVDs. I got Batman. I have Spider-Man. Yep. But really, the Blu-rays. But I'm really. HD is good enough for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's good enough for most people. And it's neat, but you need to, for a Blu-ray to be, optimal, you need the great sound system and you need the Blu-ray. A lot of people don't even have a 1080p TV. They have 1080i or 720p.
Yeah. And the other, I suppose there's a part of me that would sort of like to have some crazy sound system, but my wife has zero interest in drilling holes in the walls and doing all that stuff and how awful that would look. And the truth is, the TV sounds pretty good. And we still, even coming out of the speakers on our TV, we have those moments where there's a phone ringing somewhere or something, or a car crash.
You're looking around.
We look around like, where did that come from?
Did the train just come into the living room? Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And one of my pet peeves were during Christmas time, there were a lot of stores selling the TV and the Blu-ray set. And it was like $1,000, right?
Yeah.
And the TV is a 720p TV,
right.
And they're selling the Blu-ray, and I would go crazy. I would say, these people have no idea what they're watching.
I know.
They're not getting 1080p. They're not getting Blu-ray quality. They're getting just HD, and they're not even great HD.
This stuff has changed so so quickly. We bought our first HD TV less than 4 years ago, I believe. It just died, which is, of course, a measure of how long things last these days. But we went to Costco, and the selection is unbelievable. The sizes are unbelievable. There's 3D now, which I don't personally want, but it's there if you want it. And these things they're like an inch thin or whatever. It's crazy what you can get now. So we've reached this weird point with consumer electronics, and it's true of iPods and even laptops, where these things aren't designed. You're not gonna go 10 years with any of these things.
No. Well, Paul, I'm gonna tell you something. In my living room, I have a Hitachi Plasma.
Yep.
I bought it in 2002. 2002. I spent $7,500 on the TV.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Like that, yeah.
It's still probably the best TV we have in the house. It was the top of the line at the time, and the thing is still running. And I have very little burn-in.
This is the TV that doesn't have HDMI, obviously.
No, it has DVI. Yeah, no HDMI.
Yeah, we had a couple of rear projection TVs, and those things always had the screwiest connections. They would have composite and component, but then they would have like a VGA connection.
Yeah.
And that never worked right. That kind of stuff.
I never got the when you were going to HD, they did the digital comb filter.
Yeah.
And the TVs had component in them. You could do a component, setup with the cable box or whatever.
Yep.
And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why you have component on the TV. Because it wasn't high def.
Component will do HD essentially, right?
But it wasn't a high def TV.
Oh, it wasn't a high def.
No.
Well, I suppose the argument would be this is possibly the best the picture can be, maybe.
Yeah.
Although you could go from coax from your cable box to your TV. That would be HD too. I mean, that would look fine.
Yeah. It was interesting how they were selling, but they were selling them as in betweens. Or we had the ED TVs. Do you remember that? Enhanced,
yeah.
Which were
the short-lived ED
the biggest scam ever.
It was that enhanced definition.
Enhanced definition.
Yeah.
I don't know, what did they do? I forgot what it was. It wasn't high def.
What was the resolution of it? We should look that up.
Oh yeah, I got to look it up now. My mother-in-law bought it when I was dating.
It's got to be like 960 by 450 or something. 852 by 480.
852 by 480. So it was still 480.
See, that's a great DVD resolution right there.
My God, so it was still 480p or 480i.
It's 480. Yeah, 480, but it's widescreen, right?
Widescreen. So that's all it was. What a useless thing. My mother-in-law had bought it.
The Wikipedia entry says that it was a square pixel device, and since no one sends signals with square pixels,
yeah,
it was always scaled. Anyway, the image would have to be dynamically scaled.
It was awful. I'm looking at it. It was the same 480 lines at SD, but they were progressive scans. So it was actually theoretically it was upscaling 480i interlace to 480p.
Okay.
Progressive scan. So I guess you know what it was? It was DVD quality. I mean, that's what I guess they were doing. But my mother-in-law had bought it thinking it's high def. And for years I was telling her, I'm like, you don't have a high def TV? She goes, yes, I do. It's high def. I'm like, no, it's not. And then she finally realized that it wasn't.
Yeah, people assume that DVD is high def for some reason. But actually, it's too bad they didn't come up with ED TV sooner. I think people would have really enjoyed a TV that was designed for the aspect ratio or near the aspect ratio or widescreen aspect ratio for DVDs.
Well, most people don't even know, Paul. They don't even know what they're watching. You look at some of the stuff and they're like, oh, is that high def? And it's a DVD.
I don't even get me started on, early days of this stuff. I had a friend who would, use his TV to stretch out every square image that came through it because he wanted it to fill the screen.
Yeah,
and it looked horrible.
Oh wait, that was actually really bad for the old plasmas. They told you not to do that.
Yeah,
they told you to keep it in the native resolution that it's being sent at, and not to do the stretching for a long period of time because it would do something to the screen.
Our plasma got burn-in from boxed 4x3 content.
Yeah, but the news
we were assured would never happen, and then after the fact you look it up and it's like actually that's what does happen.
Well, the news ruined mine at one point. I have a little bar on the bottom. It's still very little, but it's from like the ticker because I would leave CNN on all the time.
Yep.
But they've gotten a lot better over time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we just so that we replaced ours with an LED, LCD, whatever it is, and supposedly, although I was told this before for the last one, this will not burn in, but I'm so burned by it.
You're burnt.
So
You're burnt.
I'm so upset about it. I always every time there's a 4x3 show on there, it's like I get nervous about it.
I don't know. Here in New York, they're adding. It's a big deal. We're getting the new update for the Fios box, 1.9.
What does that entail?
They're changing the way the navigation is done. I don't know.
Are they going to change how horrible the box is?
No, the box is still awful. Just the interface is blue now.
Okay.
So they've changed it a little bit, but they've added the Yes Network, the Yankee network, in 3D. We have a 3D Yankee network.
Really?
And I keep saying, rather than adding these 3D channels, why not get, whatever deal they're paying for this, spend the money and bring the channels that are not in high def and make them high def. Because I think there's a whole thing that we're not getting a couple of Comcast stations we're not getting. Like we don't get, I think we just got Spike where we're not getting, we don't get like G4, we don't get some of the History Channel high def stations. Like we're missing out a ton of them, and I just don't understand why they would want to go to 3D but not add more to the high def stations. We haven't gotten a high def station in about 2 years, which is mind blowing.
Really?
Yeah, the last network high def station they added was about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Wow. So I guess I haven't really thought about that too much, but
it's been some time.
Yeah, I mean, my big problem is my kids will start setting up their own recordings, and they always record the wrong version of a show, so they'll have it set up on one of the low channels that's not HD, and usually there's an alternative. But
yeah, I get so upset at that when the DVR starts recording, one of the channels and it's not high def.
You have to really babysit those things. I
don't know. I'm like, just figure out a way. If I have high def, if I have a high def TV.
Yep.
Somehow tell the TV to figure out a way that this is a high def TV.
Always do HD first.
Yeah, that's it.
If HD is on 2 hours later, wait for that.
I don't know.
I'm going to rewatch it later anyway. I don't care when it records.
I don't know, but it's time to wrap it up, Paul.
Already. Well,
an hour in, we did a full hour. I know you're very busy. You want to leave. I know. It's actually the studio heated back up to 90 degrees during the span of the hour. It was 79. I went up.
Lucky you didn't have to do this last week.
Last week I was on last week. I was on the air, and Friday night it hit 97 degrees, and I ended the show about 40 minutes early.
Yeah,
I got out of here.
We don't have central air. Obviously, I have a box behind me, so there were a couple of days last week where that thing was just running full tilt and doing absolutely nothing other than that you would leave the room and realize it was even worse out there, but it never actually got cool.
I just see money leaving my pocket every time the air conditioner is on. Yeah. I in my head every hour I just see a cash register just like an old style one just pushing down, and the money is just racking up every hour. Because it's brutal. It's an old colonial house. Yep. And everything just escapes. There's holes everywhere. The insulation is horrible. I don't know. I'm just miserable.
I feel your pain.
I'm miserable. Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com. Go to Paul's website, winsupersite.com. Great article there. We were talking about the should Microsoft sell Bing story, and you wrote about that recently, which is really good. I'm pulling up your website now. So
the answer is no. They should not sell it.
They should not sell. Really? The latest one is Microsoft releases OneNote Mobile 1.2 for the iPhone. You know what was really cool, actually? The look back you did on the Zune 3 and 4. I read that today. It was really interesting.
I have to do those because the site's so screwed up, but I figured I'd make it interesting and post, links to those things based on topic. And it's been interesting going back,
I love the beginning. I wish I could start off by looking back at the sentence and saying, after a rough start, Zune won over consumers. Oh, in a parallel universe, possibly. Do you know what are they going to do with that? By the way, what are they doing with the Zune?
So what I had heard, and this actually dates back some months now, but Zune brand was dead internally at Microsoft a long time ago. That when the Zune HD launched, those guys were scattered to the wind and never to make another product again. That Zune as a brand would be phased out and replaced with some other brand at Microsoft. And at the time, they didn't know what it was going to be, but I was told it would probably be Xbox because Xbox was a big, successful consumer brand for them. But obviously there have been no new devices. The PC software has only had minor updates. It's appeared in Windows Phone. The Zune service is still available in pretty decent form over the Xbox 360 as well. So I think ultimately, my understanding, unless something has changed, is that the Zune name will disappear, which is too bad. But then all those things we associate with Zune are going to continue in some form.
Yeah.
Probably with a different name or whatever. But I guess we'll see. I wish they would do more. I mean, that was one of the things reading those stories. I am reminded by how much I really love that stuff, and I wish it was more. I wish people understood how good it was and had given it more of a chance. It's too bad.
Yeah. But you could go to Paul's website, winsupersite.com. You could watch the shows, every week on the website at guysfromqueens.com. Also go to gfqlive.tv to watch live. We're on the Zune. We're on iTunes. We're on pretty much every service you could imagine. That's pretty much it. We'll see you all next week. Good night, everybody.